儚くに輝く星よ、光放つ未来へ、勇者の名は響く、天使のような心で、彼の名はヒメル。
Hello everyone, this is Leon. In this video, I will be showing you how to make Himmel's Hero Sword from Sousou no Furiren. I've left the template link down in the description below, be sure to check it out. Because that's what the hero Himmel would have done. After printing the template onto the papers, first is to connect all the pieces together. After that, I normally will also stick them onto harder cardstock, as I always keep my template for future and this makes it last longer. After that, first start from making the blade. Remove just the blade part from the template and trace 4 copies on 5mm EVA foam. After that, remove this middle part from the template and trace onto 2 of the copies. Now cut the pieces out with a razor knife. And also cut the middle part, but do not remove it yet, as it will help with holding the piece together. This middle part will be used for slotting the support structure, and I will show you in a while. Now is a trick I always use for enhancing the tip, which is using this wooden skewer. First draw a marking line from the tip onto the foam, then make a shallow V-cut to make a groove to slot the skewer in. I also make the cut on the other side to keep the skewer center. After that, put some glue onto the groove and stick the skewer in. I also trim the skewer slightly shorter so it can slot into the aluminum tube easier. Next, apply contact adhesive onto the foam but avoid the middle part, as these 2 pieces will be the middle piece. Then I stick both of these pieces together, using a piece of cardstock to cover one side and slowly remove it as I attaching it. After that, stick the other part using the same method. Now I can finally remove the middle part. Next, cut a small strap with 2mm foam and stick onto the skewer. This will help with attaching it into the aluminum tube. Now slot the 1cm aluminum tube into the gap and slot the skewer into the aluminum tube and attach it with glue. Lastly is just cover the other side of the blade. Next, I remove the sanding guide from the template and trace it onto the blade. This will help with sanding down the edge to sharpen it and to fight the Demon King. Next, I print another piece of the template just to get a middle reference. I cut away the middle detail and trace it onto the foam, and make 2 pieces with 5mm EVA foam. As for the middle part will be 9mm EVA foam. Next, I use a Dremel to sand the edges. I first use a 80 grit sanding drum to remove most of the material, then a 240 grit sanding drum to smoothen it. And lastly, I use a wooden block and a sanding paper to smoothen the surface even further. Same goes to this detail as well, because that's what the hero Himmel would have done. After the sanding is done, it should look something like this. Next, I attach them on with contact adhesive. After the blade is done, move on to the guard. The handguard is pretty straightforward. The only thing to take note is to do slanted cut at all the edges. As for the foam, I'm using 4mm hard EVA foam, so it is hard enough and more durable than the money in my wallet. Coming to this, to reduce visible seams and overall neatness, I'm making the cut from behind. I first mark all the cutting line at the back and then make a shallow cut at the back as well. After that, I mark again at the cut and did slanted cut to lower the angle on the seams that is folding inward. Then continue with the build and stick it with super glue slowly. After that, it should look like this. Next, basically using the same technique and proceed with the 2 other parts, because that's what the hero Himmel would have done. There's one thing to take note here is, I removed the smaller side here because it's too small and it will be covered as well. Lastly, proceed to the 3rd part with the same technique, but I ended up not using the inner piece. Next, we'll need a 1-inch aluminum tube for the sword handle. First by attaching the guard to the sword, and I also did marking the center for more accurate attachment. After that, I cut 1cm wide straps on 6mm EVA foam. and attach to 4 sides of the aluminum tube. Now slot the 1-inch aluminum tube in and fix it in place with glue. After slotting in the 2 other guards, also fix it in place. Next, move on to this part. Using 3mm EVA foam slanted cut at the side, this will give it a sharper edge. After attaching one side of the end, I mark the attachment guide and stick it on with contact adhesive. Now the blade is done, it is time to move on to the handle. Do not confuse myself, I'm doing it piece by piece using 5mm EVA foam. I first connect all the pieces together, then round it up. After that, use a heat gun to soften the foam, then reshape it rounded. After that, cover up the both ends with 5mm of EVA foam as well. To ensure seamless finishing, also not to forget to do slanted cut at the edges, because that's what the hero Himmel would have done. Once it is done, do a test fit to make sure it can fit nicely. After that, I use steel epoxy to attach the handle onto it. To use this steel epoxy, all you have to do is squeeze even amount from both tubes and mix it evenly. I also use a skewer to apply the epoxy because it can go in deeper to the handle. After that, slot in the aluminum tube and also seal the connection with super glue. Now move on to the handle tip. The recommended thickness is also written on the template. If you don't have the thickness, you can also stack up few pieces of foam because that's what the hero Himmel would have done. I also stacked up foam to get a 1.5cm thickness for this ring. To get a more accurate attachment, I brush on the contact adhesive, slot it onto the aluminum tube to stack up the layer. As for the dome, just try to stack it as accurate as possible as it will be sanded afterward. After that, mark the attachment guide, then you'll be ready to sand. And after sanding it, it should look something like this. Now just attach it on with super glue will do. Now the sword base is finally done, it is time to proceed to painting. There are few steps to do before actual painting, and the first is to heat seal with a heat gun. Heat sealing is important because EVA foam has tiny holes. Heating the foam will melt and seal the tiny holes. This will make the foam surface even smoother for the pen to sit on. After that, then can proceed to priming the sword with EVA glue or white glue. As for me, since I have access to air compressor, so I'm priming it with water-based paint. At the same time, I also proceed to make the scabbard. Making this is very simple. Just cut 2 pieces of these, each on 1cm EVA foam, and stack them together with contact adhesive. Cutting 1cm foam is not easy. The key is to maintain a straight, right angle hand gesture and cut slowly. After getting all the foams cut, I mark the attachment onto the corresponding foam. The smallest part will be at the middle, and the biggest part will be at the outer surface. After finishing the build, I also use the same template from the middle part as sanding guide. After that, the side will be sanded down to round it off. After sanding the edges, next is to add the details. I first remove this detail from the template, then I tape the scabbard with masking tape. This is to make an actual copy on the scabbard, so the masking tape has to be laid out flat. After that, I trace the guiding line and manually mark the center line on the masking tape. Now slowly remove the masking tape. Trim the edges and make cuts to make it flat. After that, stick it onto the cardstock and then refine the edges with the original template. After cutting the template out, I trace it onto a 2mm foam and connect the middle part, just like this. After that, assemble the details first. Then attach it onto the scabbard. After that, for the other 2 more details, it's much more easier. I simply extend a little bit longer and then wrap it onto the scabbard to make sure the length. Then trim off the excess part. After that, just roll it up and attach it onto the scabbard will do. Lastly, just repeat the same method on the last details and it is done. After that, just like the sword, heat seal the scabbard first and then prime it. At the same time, I also painted the silver base color onto the sword. After the paint is dry, I first cover up the sword edge with masking tape. I do recommend using a good masking tape or painter's tape, because masking process can be easily f***ed up. Next, I painted a metallic blue. and mask it after it is fully dry. I also added a foam holder here, so it will be easier for me to hang it during the painting process. Next, I painted the grayish blue and masked it after the paint is fully dry. At this moment, I also painted the white part on the scabbard, then mask it and paint the final gold color. Now pray to the 1000 years elf when removing the masking tape and hope everything is fine. Once I made sure everything is fine, I then proceed to the final touch-up. This is an extra touch-up, so it's up to you to follow this step. I roughly measure 1 cm from the edge and then cover it with masking tape. Then I roughly leave a 1 mm gap and then cover it with masking tape. I also cover everything up in case anything happens, as well as masking the gap for the handle. Then I paint the gap with black color for the additional detail. After that, remove all the masking tape, and then it is done.
金具に輝く星よ光放つ未来へ勇者の名は響く天使のよう